Hi everyone, I'm Miss Sheila from the Hampton Bays Public Library Children's Room. Today we are going to be making this stuffed dog craft. So this project came to me from a patron named Vivian who took out this book called Crafty Creatures by Jane Bull and came across a very similar project. Vivian brought the book into me and asked me if we could make something similar, so I used the pattern and the directions in the book. So for some of you today, it will be your first sewing project. Sewing is really a skill that you need to practice quite a bit and be patient. This is not a craft that we can do in an afternoon. You can do a little bit, come back to it, start and stop the video. If you need a little more help or you need some more needles or thread, please come in and we are happy to help you. So I hope you enjoy this. I can't wait to see your dog craft, and here we go. So let's get started. You will need, in addition to everything that's in your craft bag, a pair of scissors and some glue. I'm going to put that glue to the side and the scissors for now. You also have a bag of fluff that we're going to stuff the dogs with when we're done. And then this is the body of the large dog, 2 ears, and the body of the small dog. And this is going to be a little backpack. You also have embroidery floss or thread and some straight pins and an embroidery needle. Now, this needle is larger and less sharp than a regular sewing needle, and it's a great needle to learn to stitch with. You also have some fittings for the eyes and noses and some safety pins. So I'm going to clear some things away and start with the large part of the dog. I'm going to stitch from one sort of shoulder right between the head and the little paw, and I'm going to go all the way around following this line until I get to the same spot on the other side. So the first thing we need to do is take some of our thread. Now it's hooked in the little cardboard. You can release it, and it's very difficult to sew with a very long piece of thread. So start small. We'll start and stop on the way, but the thread should be about 2 feet long, not much longer. We're going to fold it in half so you have a reasonable amount to work with. And then I'm going to snip it, and now we're going to thread the needle. So on the top of the needle there's a hole, and we're going to take the thread and slip it through. So mine went through pretty easily. It doesn't always do so. Another method, I'm going to pull it out, is to fold the thread. It makes it a little stiffer and it can be easier to push it through that way. So let me see, and there it goes. It takes some practice to learn to thread a needle, and it's nice to have a grown-up help you. If you're having trouble, come in the library and I can help you. So now we're going to take the 2 ends of the thread. We're going to pinch them together and pull so that we just have one long width. We're going to take this and we're going to put a knot in the end. Now the way I was taught was to put the thread across my finger and wrap around and roll it and then pull down. And then I'm going to snip that end. So it's important when we start that we start on the inside. These 2 pieces of fabric have been sort of temporarily glued together so that it's easy to keep them together. But we're gonna pinch up a little bit here, and I'm gonna take my needle underneath and I'm gonna push it up so you'll see that that knot is going to stay inside. I can tuck it in, and now we're going to start to stitch. So the thing about stitching is that it takes practice. We're using a different color thread so it's easier for us to see, but we're just gonna go into the fabric and then come back up. So here I go down into the fabric. I'm gonna pull it all the way through, and then I'm going to move my needle sort of a similar space on the other side, and here I go pulling up. Don't pull too tight. It will bunch the fabric and it won't look as nice. You can always take your needle and loosen it up a little, but it shouldn't be too tight. So now I'm gonna go back down, and then on the other side, I'm going to come back up. Now, when you get more skilled and used to stitching, you won't have to flip it. So I'm going to go down, and then I'm going to come back up. And it's good when you put the needle in to sort of judge it and see if you're happy. This is the time where you could pull it out and say, no, I think I'm gonna go somewhere differently. And, oops, it gets a little caught, just stop and straighten it out. And here I come up again. And we're gonna continue like this all the way until we get to here. So now I've gotten to a point where I really don't have much thread left, and I'm probably not going to make it back to here, which is fine. We're going to use a couple of pieces of thread for all of these. It's much easier when you're learning to use short pieces of thread. So what I'm going to do, remember over here, we went in between. I want to hide the knot that I'm going to put in. So when I make this next up stitch, I'm only going to go through one layer. Okay, there I am. And then I'm going to knot this off. So I'm going to do this sort of an easy way. There are more elegant ways to do it, but I'm going to cut the needle off, and then I'm left with 2 open strings. And for these, I'm just gonna tie them in a simple knot like you're doing the first knot of tying your shoes. And I'm gonna do one more, and then I'm gonna trim off these edges so that they stay inside, and I'm not doing a good job of this, that they stay hidden and the finished product looks a little bit better. Now, you can also put the knot on the outside. It's not going to be a big deal. Just be careful when you're trimming these edges that you're not also trimming the fabric. Okay, and then I'm going to take another length of the thread and thread my needle again. So the nice thing is that you get practice doing this as you go. Okay, let's see if I'm gonna be... So you can also twist the end, and that will make it easier to thread the needle. But it does take a lot of practice. And then I'm going to put these two ends together again, put them over my finger, wrap around, and roll it up. If you're really good at this, you can get the knot all the way at the end, but I am not an expert. And I'm going to trim that off. And then I'm going to start my next stitch inside the one layer next to where we stopped. And continue. Now, if you feel like you're not happy with your stitches, you have enough thread where you could start over, but it's nice to see early sewing projects and see how you've improved as you go on. I'm not an expert at sewing. I don't do it enough, I think, to be really good at it, but I do enjoy it. And that's the most important part, is to just have fun while you're doing it and try to learn a new skill. So now I'm coming close to that mark where we said we were going to stop. And I'm going to come right up there and sometimes it's a little more difficult to get the needle through because this is felt and it can be uneven. So if you feel like it's too hard to get the needle through, just move even the littlest bit and it will be easier. So I'm going to stop there. The next thing you'll notice on one side are two little holes. And so this is a good time for us to put in our eyes. So I'm going to use these larger eyes. These smaller eyes will be for our tiny dog. And you have backings for them. These are two bigger ones and two small ones. So we want to use the larger ones. And these go into the hole and then flip it. And then this just goes on once. You push it all the way down and it will stay secure. I'm going to put the other one in and push it down. Okay, so now I'm going to make one more stitch halfway into one layer and knot this off because I want to use the needle to work on the ears. And I'm going to just cut this. Again, there are better ways to do this by more skilled seamstresses, but this will work for us. We don't have to worry about knots that are on the inside. Okay, so we're going to finish here, and now we're going to start on the ears. So here are the ears. If you look at the dog, the ears are going to go like this, and we're going to sew them into the top of the head. Some of you may have simpler kits that you're just going to sew around, but most of you have these with the separate ears. So the first thing we need to do is stitch around these and stuff them with a little fluff. So let's put the body of the dog aside. This isn't quite enough thread. I may be able to use it for something else later, so I'm going to put that over there and take off another piece. Okay, not too big because we don't have that much to sew around. And threading my needle again. Oh, So far, I don't want to jinx myself, but the needle threading's going better than I thought. And now I'm going to tie off the end and trim it. So we're gonna put a little bit of fluff in these, so we're not gonna sew all the way around. I'm gonna start at the bottom and I'm gonna leave some room on this side. So let's go inside one layer and begin to sew around. And these ears are relatively small, so we want to leave kind of a big opening to put our fluff in. So I'm going to go down. Again, not too tight with the stitches. It will hold. And here we come up and back down. You may find that you've poked your finger. I have to say it's very hard to learn to sew without poking your finger once or twice. So luckily this is not a very sharp needle. So now when I pull this open, you'll feel sort of the adhesive that we use to keep it together. Put your finger right in there. And now I'm going to take a little bit of the fluff, kind of roll it in your hands. And you don't need very much. Just a little to give it a little, actually that's even too much. Give it a little puff. And now continue your stitching and we're going to go right back to where we started. Whoops, I'm tangling myself a little. It's good to just stop, untangle, and I'm almost finished all the way around. And for this one, we don't even have to be quite so exact because the bottom is going to be hidden on the dog. So one way to do this is to make a stitch like that, put the needle through that little hole. That's a much fancier knot. I should have watched my stitches a little, and there we go. It's not my best, but I don't want to stop the video camera, so I'm making some concessions. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the second ear. So the next thing we're going to do is add some of the stuffing to the body of the dog. And so there's a little bit of adhesive inside, but it will not resist if you put your fingers in. I'm gonna put the dog face down and take some of my fluff. You don't need to use too much. It will make it hard to sew, so be not overly generous with it, but make sure you get down into those legs so that it takes shape. and into the arms. This is where it gets a little tricky, but I think this is a good point to put in some fluff so that you can get your hands in. But we're going to close it up a little bit more. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is to thread our needle again, and we're going to sew up a little bit on the side, and then we're going to stuff some more. So let me take a little more thread. And as I said, you should have plenty. By the time you finish this dog, you will be more experienced and the other pieces will be easier to do. But remember, this isn't a one-day project. This is something you can do over several days and take your time with it. And okay, I'm going to tie that knot. I'm going to go in between the layers and come up with one stitch. And then I'm going to continue, I should move that out of the way, continue for a few more stitches. Now, if you have another idea about the best way to do this, try it. I'm not trained as a seamstress. I'm always up for a craft project, and I do my best, but there are many people who are much better than this, than me. So I'm going to take a few more stitches about up to where the eyes are. Okay. And then I'm going to stop. And I'm going to take the straight pins that came in my kit. I'm going to position the ears where I think they would look best. And these pins are sharp. They're actually pins for quilting, but they're nice and long, so they're easy to use. And I'm going to put this other ear here. Take another pin. And pin. Go through all the layers, make sure that the ears are attached. And then I'm going to take a little more stuffing and come in from the side here. And this is really going to be the final time we put stuffing in. So if you want to go down a little more, if it doesn't look quite right, like I think this arm could be a little better, this is the time to do it. Okay. And then what might be helpful is to take another pin and just pin this side shut. Okay. And then you can continue your stitching. It may be tough to get through all those layers. You may have to push the needle a little hard. But it's important to make sure that those ears are sewn on so that when we release the pin, it all stays together. Okay, so I'm gonna pull that pin out. Be careful with the pins, especially if you have younger people in your house that might not know what it is and get hurt. We don't want that to happen. So, and I'm gonna keep coming, and now I've got the second ear, and again getting through all these layers. we go. So I think it's good we're using bright colored thread. Everybody has different threads, so their dogs will look different. I can take that pin out. I'm gonna put it right back into that piece of felt that it came with so that I don't have to worry about someone stepping on it. Okay, and now I'm gonna come so if you feel like your stitch is a little bubbly, you can stop and give the thread a little tug. I don't think you want to pull too hard. And now we're about to finish. I think I am going to put a little bit more stuffing in my guy here. Okay, and this is going to be the final. You may find it easy to put a safety pin in at this point, which is easier to work with. But make sure the edges are lined up. And I'm going to finish my stitches. Doing this project has gotten me interested in sewing, and I hope we're going to be doing some more things like this. And now kind of at the edge, and just go ahead and make sure it's completely closed. This isn't my neatest sewing, but I'm trying. And then you can come back through one layer, cut. See, we're doing the same things over and over. And tie this. And then trim those edges carefully so we don't cut the rest. You can tuck it in. Okay, so there's our big dog. And now we're going to start on the small dog. So with the small dog, we don't have the extra work of the separate ears, but it is tiny. So your stitches are going to have to be a little smaller, and that can be a challenge. So let's keep threading the needle and getting better at that. And my two ends together. Always need to have scissors handy when you're sewing. And I'm going to start actually at that same part at the bottom of the head. I'm going to go inside one layer so I can hide that knot. It's a little challenging doing this and filming it at the same time because it's hard to stop and correct mistakes, but I think you can, oops. See. So now here's a good example. One piece of the thread went through and one has a little bubble. So I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to take that bottom piece of thread, I'm going to tug on it a little. And you can move the thread around when it's a new stitch. And then I'm going to pull it again, and you can pull on the needle or on the individual threads until you get the stitch that you're satisfied with. If there are little bumps and things, you know, that's okay. And this arm is so tiny, getting around this corner is tough. Just make sure that your stitches are even and that you're happy with each one. It takes some patience, it takes some practice. Not always things I'm good at. And you know, flip it over, take a look. So there, I've got a little problem there. So I'm going to use my needle and loosen it up a little so that I get the stitch that I want. Oof. Takes a little time. And there, I pulled that out. And using your needle to coax the thread is the best method. And so now it keeps happening for me, so I'm going to make sure that my needle pulls straight and that the two pieces of thread are the same length, because that's what's making that little bump. So let's try again, see what the next stitch looks like. Pull it through, and that's much better. The problem seems to be going away. So just take your time, look at what's going on, and correct what you don't like. It's tricky on this little one. And going a little bit better. You may want to make smaller stitches for this. You may want to use the different thread color. That's up to you. There are other stitches. This is a very simple stitch, but there are a lot of other stitches to learn. People that are good at hand sewing know lots of stitches that can be very beautiful and decorative. Not really my strength, but I wouldn't mind learning. So make sure that you have enough stitches on the bottom that it's going to hold the fluff in. And being a little ornery. If your needle doesn't go through exactly where you want it, just move it a little. That's one of the reasons that people use much sharper needles to sew, but that can be difficult for a beginner. And there we go. And we're almost to the top, and we're going to give this little friend some eyes, the smaller eyes, and some fluff. So let's do the eyes first. I'm going to peel down this. I'm actually going to make sure all the adhesive releases. And let's put the eyes in. So there should be holes. I punch them in all of them. That looks cute. And then put the gaskets on the back. And just push them as far as you can. They won't come off. And here we go. Okay, fluff time. I'm going to take a little bit of fluff. This guy's really small, so it's not going to take much. But go ahead and stuff. I'm just going to stuff the body for now and start to stitch the head around, and when we get to this part, we'll put some more in for the head. If you want to pin this, that's a very good idea. If you're comfortable with the pins, you could also, I'll show you the safety pin. You just press and the pin releases. You could safety pin this guy, and that way you don't have a sharp edge. Working with a pin can be a little daunting. So you can safety pin that, and now I'm going to continue stitching this little friend. I'm going to come up the top layer and there we go. It's hard because the fluff sort of pushes against you, and it can be a little tougher to stitch. I'm going to slide that safety pin out of the way. That's very helpful, but a little tough. Okay. And as we get around this tiny ear, you may want to put a little more fluff in. See, I'm a little snagged around the safety pin. Just take your time, unsnag, pull through. Check the other side to see how it's looking. Might take a little fluff and put it in. Oh, I think I have to unsafety pin it. I think that probably wasn't a great idea. I'm gonna take a break from that idea and continue to stitch. Okay, so now if you can get, I don't think I can get any fluff up there. I think that's gonna be his ear. And then I'm gonna come across the top of his little head. Oh, a little snag again. And if your needle comes up somewhere that's not right, just pull it right back out. Try again. Trying to find where the needle should go is a big part of sewing. And here we go. Across. Something like that. I want to just unsnag. Make sure the two parts of the ear are together. If you want to use pins, go ahead. It's a very good idea. It's a little harder to film it that way, so I'm trying to keep the pins out. And oof. Almost done. Now, here's a good example. I'm actually pulling and making a knot, and that's not okay. So I'm going to take my needle and come back out. Those things take a little practice to see them as they're happening. I will tell you that as gentle as you can pull this thread while you're watching the stitches, the better off you will be at trying to get rid of problems. Okay, so I'm coming around the corner. I only have a few stitches left, so this is a good time if you want to stick a little more fluff in. This is the moment to do it. And then you can pin this or hold it. I'm gonna hold it just so you can see a little better. It's actually not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. And now we're back to where we started. So I'm gonna take one more, well actually I'm gonna go all the way up and close it. And then go down halfway and come out through one of the layers. Again, you don't have to do it that way. Let's do it an easier way just to show you. I'm going to come out through the back, and you can tie it off by just snipping the needle off and tying like the first tie of your shoelaces. And let's tie it again just to be sure, and then just trim those edges, and you can see that it's almost hard to detect actually. And there's our tiny dog. So now we have our big dog and our little dog. The last thing we're going to make is a little carrier for the big dog to hold the little dog. So for the last piece of this project, we're going to make this little carrier for the baby dog. So I've already threaded my needle because I think we've seen quite a bit of that. The first thing you want to do is to fold this so that it's even. And now it's really your choice how you want to hold it together. You can use the straight pins, and I would put them across, or you could use safety pin if you're more comfortable with that. We're going to be sewing the sides, so I'm going to put them in the middle so it's not quite as much in my way. And then turn it over, make sure it's even, and then we're just going to stitch up here and stitch up here. I'm once again going to start on the inside. What if you feel more comfortable starting on the outside and trimming the edges? You go ahead. And now we have to get through not only the felt, but also you may hit some of that ribbon, and that may give you a little resistance. And just go, take your time, enjoy. This might be the third, fourth, fifth day that you're working on this project. You may feel much more comfortable with what you're doing, which is great. And just remembering the same things that we've been doing. Flip your project over, take a look at it. You'll see that I machine stitched the ribbon on with invisible thread, so you will see the little indentations from the machine. I'm a much more comfortable machine sewer than a hand sewer, and I really love to use invisible thread. It's not quite invisible, but it does. These stitches are very pretty and decorative, but invisible thread can be very useful too. So almost done with this side. I'll put one more stitch in. I'm gonna go all the way through and just make a knot in the back. You can go halfway and hide the knot, whatever you'd like to do. And I have enough thread on my needle for the other side as well. If you want to start at the top and work your way down, that works as well. Don't pull too tight. When you pull too tight, it will affect the whole thing. And trimming off the edge. And now we're going to do the other side. Okay, so I've sewn up the other side. Now I'm going to remove the pins. Again, I'm going to take this straight pin out. I'm going to put it right back in that piece of felt that it came in so that it stays safe from hurting anyone. So now I'm going to glue on the noses. I'm using a craft glue. If you need a little craft glue, come on in. I'm happy to give you some. And I don't want to get too much on. You could use a paintbrush to put it on as well. And I'm gonna give the little dog his nose. And then I'm actually gonna put the glue on Big Dog. His glue's a little gloppy. And I'm gonna put the big pom-pom on him. And then you can move the little carrier onto the Big Dog. Oops. I should have let that dry, but make sure you let it dry at home. And there goes the little dog. So please come in and show me your projects. If you're having difficulty, you need more thread, you need more needles, you need a new pattern, come in. We are happy to help you. And I want to thank our patron Vivian for suggesting this project and showing us this book, Crafty Creatures by Jane Bull. It has a lot of wonderful projects like this and other animals. So please, if you're in the library, come in and take a look at it.